Hey everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day, and we have a very special buy day Friday for you today, because not only is it the Baltimore Orioles home opener, but today is the 1-year anniversary of Buy Day Friday. That's right, this is our 53rd show. We've done it every week. Neither rain nor snow nor sleet nor hail has stopped us from filming Buy Day Friday. And today, we're talking about railroads, all things railroads. And we're gathered here in Rockville at the site of the largest stone arch bridge in the world, Cathy. It's over 3,000 feet long, traverses the Susquehanna. And we're talking about railroads today because I had an amazing experience last week. I went up to New Baltimore, New York, which is up near Albany, and I went to a public storage unit with a gentleman, and when we rolled up that front door, it was filled with travel guides, globes, and humongous wall maps. But let's get to those travel guides first, because what's really interesting is he started off with 2 guidebooks that were meant for people to read while on the railroad going overland to California. We'll start with this one. They're both guidebooks. They're competing guidebooks. This one's by Rand McNally. These are from the 1880s. And as you can see, this gentleman bought it and was reading it on Sunday, October 28th, on the Southern Pacific Railroad. What's really interesting is the Southern Pacific Railroad ran from Leavenworth, Kansas. And you've got a big folding map. I'm not going to unfold it right here, but it talks about, there it is, Leavenworth, Kansas, the great city in the West. And the other book here, which was a competitor, this is Crawford's Overland Tourist to California. It was also designed to be sold on trains. See where it says that, Cathy?
Yeah.
And this is a different railroad. This is a railroad that went from Omaha, Nebraska, and was more centrally located through the West. Don't ask me what's going on with Utah's Best Children as a frontispiece, but I will tell you that it is a great example of Manifest Destiny on the next page, because there is an example really of Manifest Destiny in all its glory, which is the coming of the railroad, supplanting that of the stagecoach, and leading from sea to shining sea. Now, along with these guidebooks, which are really interesting in their own right, you had all these wall maps. And here is a wall map from 1855 that was actually published in Philadelphia. So it's a Pennsylvania one. Let's start where we are here in Harrisburg. And what you see when you go west immediately is just these wide expanses of territory, which contrast very much with all the counties and the organizations of the East Coast. And in 1855, Congress had determined that we needed a new Transcontinental Railroad, and they asked the Secretary of War, who at that time was the administration of Franklin Pierce. You know who the Secretary of War was at that time? It was Jefferson Davis, who would later go on to be the President of the Confederacy. And he commissioned George McClellan, who would later go on to lead the Army of the Union, to basically route with the Army Corps of Engineers a series of prospective routes. Now, Jefferson Davis wanted a southern railroad that would go to California. McClellan favored a more northernly one, and there was also a central railroad. This was a big deal because when the railroad was built, it was going to cost Congress more than an entire year's budget to do, and there was a lot of patronage. And what basically happened was, in the midst of this survey, commissioned by Jefferson Davis, here, this is it. This also came from a bookseller in New York just this past week. You were there with me, Cathy, so you know we purchased it. This is called the Pacific Coastal Railroad Survey. All 12 volumes published between 1855 and 1860, and it describes the various routes that could possibly be used for a transcontinental railroad. Jefferson Davis suggests McClellan do the survey. And if you look in volume 1, which doesn't have any illustrations, it basically, here it is. There's Jefferson Davis saying Captain McClellan is gonna do this. This book was actually owned by a representative. Let me show you the title page. First of all, Reports on the Surveys, volume 1 of what would become 12. It was owned by a congressman from Virginia. And there it is going to Leavenworth, that same Leavenworth, Kansas that we were talking about before, supporting the southern route. Well, what happens is the South ends up seceding from the Union, and so there isn't a lobby for a southern route, and we end up having a more central and northerly route that is created, and eventually the Golden Spike goes in Utah. But what is really interesting about these reports is that they were done with great care, and each report had a sort of separate theme. So volume 2 is really interesting because it shows you the level of artists that went on each of these expeditions. There was artistry in these books that rivaled that of the Lewis and Clark expedition. These are hand-colored plates. Each of the volumes has it, but they were all done professionally. And so many of the congressmen, this was their first view of what the West looked like, other than, you know, what they saw on the wall maps, which is pretty amazing. So that's volume 2. Volume 3 began to focus on Native Americans. And this volume is extraordinary in the illustrations that were able to be captured. Here is a good title page for that, which talks about the various tribes. Here's an example of some imagery on the Rio Colorado near the Mojave villages. Now, let me show you some other really interesting examples of engravings that are in this work. Look at the tattooing and marking there of the Mojave Indians. Look at the detail that went into the ornaments and the objects that were discovered along the way. These were used as trade or ceremonial objects by the Native Americans. And then in the back of this one, you see a really interesting long form map, which sort of shows you the topography of getting from one coast to the other coast of the country. Pretty difficult to do with a railroad, wouldn't you say, Cathy? Yes, it was. And so this was published and given to each member of Congress, and you can imagine their reaction as they were viewing all these different things. Let's go to volume 4, because volume 4 is really about the botany that was uncovered, and they're the most amazing drawings of cacti and other types of plants that were discovered along the route. The flora, so to speak. Look at this first illustration. I thought that was amazing. Just such detail. So professional artist after professional artist. The next volume, volume 5, was the first to really go into depth about California. And this volume produced really the first image that was widely seen of Los Angeles. And I think that's pretty amazing. What do you think Los Angeles looked like in 1853? Well, that's what it looked like in 1853. Isn't that amazing? Compare that. I don't have the modern Los Angeles next to it, but that's it. That's Los Angeles. And, you could do the same thing, for instance, with San Diego. That's San Diego. And again, hand-colored illustrations, really the first to bring to a widespread attention the glories of the West. Now, I'll take you through a couple more of these volumes, but you're getting the idea. We've discussed the flora, but this book is dedicated to the trees that were encountered on the way. Aren't those amazing? And they're illustrations of some of the great trees, which unfortunately are no longer with us, but at the time impressed the artists and impressed everyone who was there describing them. Look at those great, majestic old trees. Well, the survey continued. They got to snakes and frogs and reptiles and fossils. Here are some fossils that they found. We have some good examples of some of the fauna. Those are hoofs. Those are skulls, teeth. This one is particularly interesting because this has the birds. And these are some of the most amazing hand-color images of birds I've ever seen. Look at how beautiful the bird is there. Look at the detail ornithographically with regard to the eyes and the claws. So this is more than just a simple set, right? This is an amazing set which also has an entire volume dedicated to maps. So again, it's like a train, all the cars of the train leading us across the Transcontinental Railroad. I thought it was an amazing book. We spent a lot for that, didn't we, Cathy?
Yeah.
But it's because it's special and there are very few complete copies still in existence today. And we have one at the Midtown Scholar. Okay, we're going to end with a funny book. Come back to the box. Now, as you know, rail travel replaced what? Horses.
Yeah.
And I have one of the more amusing books. Again, this is a real book, and it is called How to Bomb-Proof Your Horse. And what they mean by bomb-proof is how to get your horse to not be spooked by doing things like crossing bodies of water or narrow bridges or whatnot. This is going in the all-time funny case, how to bomb-proof your horse. Thanks for watching. Watch next week and every week on Buy Day Friday.